They don't know that there are solutions available to them. They don't need to go to the major banks to get a solution. There are so many options available to them.
Joining me on the line today, I've got John Matthews from iFinance Australia. Welcome to the call, John.
Thank you for the opportunity.
More than welcome. Give us a bit of an understanding of your background and what you do for the business community.
Okay, so I'm a finance broker, having for the last 10 years, specialising sort of at looking at SMEs around their cash flow need and also around making that work for them in a capacity of whether it's cash flow for their business or also putting their mortgage in a better position for them, because many business owners unfortunately use their home as collateral, but they actually don't need to do that. And on top of that as well, I'm an accountant, so of 15 years, and just in this field because I feel I've got more value to add on many levels.
Fantastic. So tell me, like, obviously we're in an interesting economy right now, with the looming lockdowns, and it's probably no light at the end of the tunnel until, maybe another year away. What's your read on the economy right now and what business owners should be thinking about?
The economy, I think, has been hurt quite a lot because of the amount of debt that government has had to get into to get us to the situation we've been in for the last 18 or so months. And there was no choice around that, really. They had to help families. And as we all know, SMEs are the core of this country. They employ the biggest number of employees of any sort. Mm-hmm. And I think what I see day in, day out, and the amount of calls I receive every day from small business owners about getting their cash flow sorted. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of businesses run to getting their finances sorted when there's a catastrophe, most of the time, when they're short on cash. But and they don't know that there are solutions available to them that don't need their home as security. They don't need to go to the major banks to get a solution. There are so many options available to them.
Right. So really, like what you're saying sort of stands behind the whole idea of cash is king in business. And, the small business owner generally is trading on a very skinny bank account. Comes an event like the lockdown, and these people are digging deep. Now, we got a nice favour from the government last year. They gave us some cash, but this year that ain't happening. So I think people who don't have any sort of capital sitting to the side are really feeling the pinch. And it sounds from what you're saying, we don't need to go to the bank with our hand out. There's other options for getting cash into a business, yeah?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a typical example. I had a client earlier this year who wanted some funding because they had an opportunity with a big contract that was coming up. Now, rather than dipping into their cash, they firstly said to me, well, I've got a fair bit of cash put aside. I said, well, you don't need that. I said, well, how much do you need? He said to me, probably about 100 to 150,000. So we got him the 150,000. He then secured this contract, which was worth a couple of $1 million. So the biggest setback that a lot of businesses see, well, why do I need to borrow money and put myself further in debt? But the reality is this particular client borrowed 150 and turned it into a $2 million transaction. So it's a stepping stone to get you in the right direction. It opens a lot of paths, whether it be expanding your business to internationally or expanding from one state to multiple states, taking on more clients. It gives you more capacity to do more things. And you shouldn't always just look at, well, I'm going to get myself in debt of 150,000. No, that debt of 150 is going to turn your business from, say, a smaller turnover, say $500,000 to say several million.
Right. It's really using the capital in a smart way.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about paying the rent, or it's not just about, filling a hole because I don't have enough money to pay payroll this week. You're talking about actually getting funding to leverage the business up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not just leverage the business. So you could use, for example, there's something called debtor finance. So you have every business that does business to business, for example. This is for a business to business solution. So let's use your business, David, for example.
Mhm.
So you've got other businesses that you invoice on a regular basis.
Yes.
So let's say your debtors, for example, is 300,000, for example. Now, that 300,000, we can use that. That's an asset. So I can go to my lenders and say, well, David's got a $300,000 asset in his
Yeah.
debtors.
Yeah.
Let's use that. We can use 80% of that. So they'll give us $240,000 as a facility.
Yeah.
Now that $240,000 you can use towards marketing. You can use it to pay suppliers. You could use it to pay your staff.
Yeah.
Buy more stock. You could use it however you please in the business.
So you're freeing up cash flow in the business by basically getting your debtors, using your debtors as an asset.
Exactly right.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I think it's just being smart with your money, and not because I think for most people in business they underinvest in things like marketing. They have capacity, but they don't know where to spend the money. We talk about marketing in a similar way. If someone had 100 grand sitting in a bank account, what would they use it to do? And so there's two parts to this equation. One is having the money. The second one is knowing how to invest that money as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sort of mindful of time. If we were to sum up, your advice to business owners right now in a couple of short sentences, what would you consider to be the most important things a business owner should be thinking about?
I think they should be looking at alternative cash flow solutions, i.e., borrowing to grow the business.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, to establish other revenue streams. So if something happens, they're not, let's take COVID as a huge setback for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
You need to have other revenue streams. And as well, we've all got to say that, I don't know anybody in Australia that likes donating more money to the tax man than they should.
Yeah.
So there are definitely avenues for that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, purchasing a property, an investment property.
Mm.
A, it reduces your tax, and B, it gives you another form of cash in your pocket each week.
Yeah. That's really about diversifying, because I think you touched on something very interesting there, which is, if a business owner is looking for alternative sources of funding, they need to have a reason to use it. Now, some of it could be just minimizing tax, but there's really another story here. And one of that is probably the property investment market, or even buying other businesses. Right now, there's some really good bargains to be had. And for the person who's got the cash in the bank, they've got this opportunity to come in and get these great deals, which won't be around for a long time. So, as an example, retail, there's a lot of retailers that are really hurting right now, and they're trying to break out of leases. And so there's a lot of equipment going up for sale. There's a lot of shops that are shutting down that will not reopen as a result of what's going on now. I'm not a fan of, being mercenary about this, but the reality is when there's bargains to be had, the people with the cash win. And I think in a market that's slowing as it is, now's probably a good time to be looking at potentially acquiring your competitor or moving into a more cost-effective lease, because people are a bit more flexible on their leasing terms. So those sorts of things require capital, right?
Absolutely. And you touched on something interesting, leases. So a lot of businesses that have current leases, what they don't understand as well is that they could actually purchase their own premises within multiple different vehicles. So, for example, they could purchase it through, if they've got enough in super, set up a self-managed super fund and purchase it there, because if it was residential, you can't occupy it yourself. But when it comes to commercial, you can actually occupy the premises yourself as an owner occupier in a commercial scene. Right. And what that allows you to do then is save money, because when you occupy it as a tenant, leasing it, you're paying a lot more to the landlord than if you were to buy it yourself. The mortgage repayments are much, much less in that situation. I've got a mechanic that I'm doing one at the moment for example. He currently pays $19,000 a month in rent. Now, his mortgage repayments are going to drop down to $6,500 per month. So he could use that extra $13,000 to invest more into the business and grow that business rather than giving it to the landlord and paying, $19,000.
Yeah. So these deals are on the table. It's just most people are scared of what's in front of them, and they don't think they have access to cash. But from what you described today, there's many sources of cash that people probably haven't even thought of or considered. And really, it sort of comes down to return on investment, doesn't it? And when money's
Absolutely.
cheap, and really at this point in time in our economy, the money's never been cheaper.
I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah. So if you can use that to take advantage of some deals out there, either buying a property for your business or anything, actually, it's a great stepping stone to move people forward.
I have to agree there with you 110%.
Awesome. So let's wrap this up in one nice statement, John. If you had one piece of advice, what would you recommend?
Pick up the phone and call your broker, call myself, and just have that conversation, because the conversation can lead to many, many ways, because there are multiple ways that you can get yourself out of, whether it's a sticky position or whether it's a growth position, to allow yourself to go to new heights and, grow your business further.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. John, I wanted to thank you for your time today. Some really interesting insights there, just alternative ways for people to fund their business growth. I appreciate your effort and your time. Thanks.
No, thank you very much for the opportunity, David.